If you hunt any kind of public land that's pretty much flat or has large flat areas, big bucks are kind of, in a lot of cases, going to gravitate towards low, wet, treeless areas. And it don't have to be human pressure. It could be wolves. It could just be where they feel safe hiding. Because I see a lot of places that don't get a lot of pressure still have bucks bed that way. They go out in them really thick, low areas where people just don't go, where wolves don't go, where coyotes don't hang out. A lot of it's underwater. Generally, the more the pressure, the more that's the case, although I see it everywhere. You're gonna see those bucks kind of just gravitate to those treeless areas where people don't hunt them. And I talk about this all the time, but I kind of wanted to give you the vision that I have when I go into a large, vast public area and I scout for this. Now, the area I was going to, I knew held some big bucks. There's some rumors going around and I've heard and seen some things, but I haven't really been in there. So I went over there and I just avoided all the flat treed land. I mean, all the other hunters going to the oak flats. I didn't try to find some oak flat that nobody's found before. I know all that stuff's being hunted. I know those deer aren't living up on that dry land, getting up out of a raspberry patch and walking over to the oak flats. I know they're not going to the cornfield by sitting in a little patch of grass 100 yards from it. That's a given. There's deer that do that, but not the deer I'm after. The deer I'm after are old, they're smart, they've learned some hard life lessons, and they live down in those treeless, wet areas. And there's a reason why I'm shooting, mature bucks and other guys are shooting 2-year-olds. When I went at that property, I avoided the mass majority of the land. I mean, it's a very large property and it gets hunted heavily. There's parking lots all over the place. There's cut mowed trails going into the woods. And I had to navigate some of that. I had to navigate across it to get to where I wanted to go. I had to follow trails for about a half mile to get to the start of where I thought the big bucks would be, which is vast areas of mixed red brush, cattails, and water. Now, when you get into this vast area of cattails, water, and just thickness, it's not all created the same. And what you really want to find is where those bucks are bedding in there. A lot of people have the idea they're just bedding everywhere, and they're not. Now, the vast majority of it's underwater, and they don't bed in water. They bed on dry ground. When you find a lone tree out there, that lone tree, or the small trees that you see amongst the buckthorn and cattails, well, that means there's little dry humps or something there, or a tree couldn't grow there, it would drown. I gravitate to those areas. Look around there for the bedding, and just naturally, that's where there's the one lone tree or the little island that I can hunt off of. Sometimes it's a tamarack island, sometimes it's a popple island, sometimes it's an island that's just high enough that it's got an oak or two. Those are great on an oak dropping year, but it has to also be attached to bedding. But those beacons of that lone tree, that little island, those are what you should be heading for. And sometimes you're going to get there and you're going to find a setup. But if you look hard enough, you'll find some that nobody's hunting. There's still plenty of areas and plenty of spots where nobody's figured this out yet. And that's where you're going to kill your giant buck. 20 yards from me, right where that grass is, there's a very heavy, very, very well used human trail for accessing this hardwood stuff, which is where most people hunt. Most people don't go down in the swamps. As behind me is the swamp, back in here, just starts dogwood and water right here back. You got this giant willow here. From up there, I was like, oh man, perfect little window to watch people access. And I figured there'd be a bed under here and a bed under here in these caves. And this one you can see pretty obviously there's a bed there. You see it wear into the dirt. You can see that something laid there quite a bit for a time period. And just watch that trail. Let people just walk past. The biggest buck I ever shot was in a spot like this, in a cow pasture. He'd bed there all the time, right underneath the loops. I call these cave beds. You can get out of the rain and everything in here. You look behind me here and there's hardwoods, there's trails going into there, there's people access and all of that. And that gets hunted a bit. But what I'm really looking for in a public land is this. When you just have, you know, miles of this dogwood and thick, nasty stuff, little islands in it and stuff, just about impenetrable. People just aren't getting back here, and if they do get back here, the deer know they're back here. And it might seem like impossible to hunt, but that's okay. Because it has the environment to create a spot for big bucks to live, and that's what you need. Because if you didn't have this, there would be no big bucks here. They'd all get shot before they got big. I mean, even when you look at the water and stuff in here to access, right now I'm sunk down about 7 inches, and where I sunk to is the ice. Otherwise I'd be going much deeper. It'd probably be over my boots. Maybe not all year because there's grass growing in here, but it'd certainly be much deeper here right now if it weren't for the frost layer at the bottom of this muck. But this is what holds these giant bucks. I mean, as soon as there's pressure, they just come out into this jungle and just live out here. And it don't matter if it's cat tails or tags or whatever, just impenetrable treeless jungles for them to survive in. Look at the networks of trails going through here. This is why there's big bucks back here. And this is exactly what I mean. Here's a big heavy trail coming out of the woods right into this jungle of crap. And look at this rub on this poplar tree. That is a giant rub. So it comes up to waist high to the center. And that's as big around as a coffee can. That's a good buck did that. There's another rub there. Nice heavy trail coming right out of the hardwoods into here. So, I mean, this sign is probably at night or the edge of night, but finding a way to hunt back in there, it's gonna probably be key. And look at this, look at these marks here. Those are tine marks. And that's almost 6 feet off the ground. I'm 6 feet tall and it's almost as high as me. Those tine marks. This branch it broke right off. It's a good buck. So when you find that sign and you find that jungle, place that they can live in despite gun pressure, despite drives, despite anything people throw at them, that's the ingredients you need for a place that'll repeatedly produce big bucks. You can see the old rubs too on these trees around here from years past, showing a history of big bucks using this pattern. Right here, I'm out in the jungle a little bit. You see it's open enough for a deer to walk through. The big buck can get through these trails. You can even see signs of them. I mean, there's pretty good rubs in some of these trees. But where would a guy hunt? I mean, you wouldn't have no shot on the ground without clearing. Deer would notice the clearing. This is the kind of stuff they live in. They can imagine this during season, how thick and heavy this is. I mean, they eat all this dogwood. If we look, they're probably munched on. Yeah, you can see the nothing fresh, but you can see where they were eating on this stuff. Pretty heavy. And they could just basically live out here during the day. They don't have to come out of here. And I'd imagine the older they get, the more they just stay in this stuff. And it's about finding little niches in here, little spots where their bulletproof plan has a flaw. And it's our job to find that flaw within this jungle and kill these things. Otherwise they'll die of old age. They're getting a free pass. Somebody's got to hunt them. Right here we're coming to a point right here that ends right here. And there's a lot of trails coming into here. A lot of them. I even see some rubs in the distance. And of course, here's the balloon. The infamous helium balloon. No design on it, just black. Must have been the 40th birthday party balloon. Black. The winds are kind of swirling right here. They're swirling off of these trees. Right in here. Might be a reason why they come into this point like this. This could be a spot to set up. Like right here someplace. I'll keep a note of it. I don't know that I see the sign yet. When I get back here and look at the bedding, I'll decide if I want to look up here. Oh, here's another heavy trail coming in. This is pretty good. You know what, maybe I'll just take a glance and see if there's a tree over here that would work for all these trails, because they all meet right here. And this could be a decent spot. I could mark it, and if I hunted this area down, this could be a spot I throw a hunt at. Awful lot of trails coming out of this cover, and I think this cover, they could be bedded right here. Any one of these trees and bushes could have beds in them. When you look in there, you find beds. So that tree there has been rubbed by not a huge buck, but probably a 2-year-old. But everything comes together right here. See what it looks like on the edge of the woods and see if it's marked. You'd think if there's a bunch of big bucks doing this, there'd be some rubs, but there ain't a lot of trees to rub either. There's a historical rub there. I don't see much. Heavy deer traffic does not necessarily mean big bucks. Yeah, none of these trees are rubbed in here. Yep, we'll just skip over this. It'd be one thing if there was historical rubs and stuff here, you know, but there should be some rubs. One rub from a 2-year-old and one rub that's about 5 years old, when other spots in here are getting competition rubs in the same type of terrain. Now, I know you guys have heard me say that you don't always need rubs to have big bucks, because you can have one in an area and no competition, and then he ain't gonna rub that much. But if this area, every point I'm finding has rubs on it, and this place right here has this many trails and no rubs, that 2-year-old rub could be a rut rub, and it could be that there's 2-year-olds going through here, I don't know. But I'm not seeing the sign. I want to see that a mature buck hangs out here and he's staging before he goes into there. Because in this property, I am seeing rubs on points. I am seeing rubs coming in and out of bedding, marking bedding areas. So if I'm not seeing rubs right here, not interested. Another property might be different. This area in here is pretty tore up. All the cattails are knocked down within these trees. Here's a really heavy trail. Really heavy. Going through here. Old rub. Oh, there's a fresh one. Old rubs, historical ones. There's another trail over there. Everything kind of coming together right here. Pretty heavy trail going off that way. The buckthorn tree looks like it's got a big bed underneath it. Sure enough, this bed's well used. Different ages of poop. There's some fresh stuff and stuff from different times during the season. We're on the edge of the cattails. This would be a little jungle in here during season when this is green. I mean, look at all the trails coming in here. Old historical rubs all the way around it. Nothing fresh though. But pretty much all the trees have been killed. They're just living in this stuff. Basically, it's a matter of finding a way in here to hunt. I mean, it could be as much as like, you got a lone cedar tree like that, you could make a hole in that and be able to shoot out of the hole, but you got to be able to get to it too. In this case, you really couldn't get there without blowing every deer out of this spot. Look at this bed here. Trails coming from every direction, a couple more beds over there. Another bedding area here. Trails going in and out of the cattails. Poopies. There's a good bed here and here. This is a jungle. Got this trail going through the cattails, and look at this. This tree is not really rubbed, but it's got all kinds of marks from antlers hitting it because it's right in the trail. So the racks are catching it as they're going by. And they're pretty high up. Coming right out of these beds. Both sides. That isn't rubbed, that's just hit by antlers. There's just jungle trails through here everywhere. Following this trail through the cattails here. And it's a little ways back from the brush, but there's that brush jungle. And I see this branch right here. There's no trees out here, this is all solid cattails. This fell off a deer's antlers, I'm sure. There's a mark on it from antlers. Interesting. That's another thing you'll see too. If I see an example, I'll film it, but a lot of times you get up into these woods and you'll find beds, you'll find cattails in them. And you wonder, how did a piece of cattail with the weight of the stalk get into or right beside a deer bed or up and down a trail? And I've noticed when deer come out, the bucks a lot of times have cattails stuck in their antlers, and I think they're dragging them back to the beds and dropping them on the trails off of their antlers. Something to keep an eye out for. So back here, I'm miles from crops and probably a good mile from any access, and yet you find heavy trails, heavy sign. Here's a nice bed downwind side of this brush here, invasive weeds. You can see these deer are just living back here because it's safe. You just gotta find ways to hunt them. I mean, up ahead I have a little bitty tiny island. I'm gonna check that. But even if that's good, access is gonna be a pain. I always like taking the downwind side of these like phragmites or any other kind of brush, because that's where the deer will bed. The downwind sides, they'll have the thick for escape, and they'll monitor the lower stuff. The downwind side of thick edges. You see trails and stuff in little beds inside of here. There's a bed in there. When I get to this island here, first thing I notice is that there's a tapering higher ground that has dogwood coming down with little mixed trees. That is something that deer really love to bed, and then they'll go from that onto the island to stage. So this could be a good island, better than I had thought. We'll see when we get in here. This trail goes right into what I would think would be the bedding, which would be right here in this dogwood under these little trees and stuff. We'll see if it's being used. It sure looks like it from this trail, but this is a very typical bedding spot. I'd be willing to bet not too many people get back this far, but you never know. We'll find out when we get on the island. But look at all these trails. Holy cow. It's getting to be a network in here. So for sure this is being bedded. We'll find the beds shortly. This is definitely a bed. This is definitely a bed right here. There's hair in it. Trails in every single direction. Always cool to see spots where people haven't been to in a while. I don't think too many people are getting back out here. Yeah, there's a good bed right behind this tree. Exit trail there. I'm gonna say these trails go right up into those trees too, where it's huntable, which is what we're looking for, a little niche in here where we can hunt them. Here's the little bed here. Hard to see, but they're matted down, you know. Cattails don't mat themselves down. Here's going to be a bed underneath this tree. All look like older beds. I'm not seeing too much fresh stuff. Stuff from earlier in the season. But man, there's a time frame when there's a lot of deer in here. Holy cow. Yeah. Lots of activity in here. Yeah, here's some hair in this bed, a lot of it. I bet hair over there. There's a good bed over there. It's actually kind of hard to sneak to this island. Maybe, coming from the back side. So when you get on the island, there are some historical rubs. I don't see a lot of fresh ones, but a lot of historical. And I did see some brush in there that had nicks on it freshly from antlers during the season. But this whole area is just matted down. I mean, look at this, it's just crushed to the ground. You can tell there's been a lot of activity back here. A lot of activity at one point in time. And there are fresh tracks too. I think maybe they're bedding on the island a little later in the season when there's more cover on the island. Matter of fact, I can see hares right here where they're laying. This tree's got a couple holes in it. A guy could get up into it. I kind of like this poplar tree better. However, one thing I see about this poplar tree is I see teeth from a climbing stick. Yeah, there's a cut off limb right there. So somebody's been hunting here and shooting over there. And that's probably why the sign is missing. There's still a lot of deer using this, but somebody's getting through here, into here somehow or another from the backside. They ain't coming the way I came. Oh well, I can write this island off. That's why the rubs are historical and not fresh. Guy was probably pounding it. It is what it is. On to the next spot. There's got to be spots in here that aren't getting hunted like that. Now within this jungle, I came onto this Tamarack Island, kind of open inside. And I noticed trails come to here like crazy. And I would think this could be a good place to hunt. What I'm gonna have to look for is setups, see if anybody's been hunting on any of these trees, and for deer sign. Big rubs and stuff coming up out of the swamp. I mean, there's enough trails coming in here that's embedding close by that this has potential. It's just a matter of whether or not deer are using it or people are using it. There's a lot of deer sign trails. That tree's got a historical. That tree's got a historical. This one's only about a year old. Right there. Oh, real heavy trail coming off of that point. Holy cow, two of them, one there, one there. And real good bedding cover right there. And that comes to a point in the cattails that would definitely hold bedding. We should put those deer coming just this short distance to come in right here. So when I leave, I'm gonna check that out and see if there's good bedding right there. Look at that rub right there. Oh, there's a fresh one. Look at that. Right next to that big historical. The fresh one there, and it's on a trail going right to that point. See that? Interesting. There's a heavy trail going through right here too. If they are coming off at this point, the setup would be right over here someplace. They're probably right in there. And you could shoot all of these trails, you know? Maybe if a guy got into the middle, if he had a wind blowing like that, he could shoot that way to there and this way to here. Because if you're over there, he'd be hitting those ones head on. But that might have a trail going through it too, which would put that better. Because then you can shoot to that trail. That's why you come in here in spring. You can't really walk around in the fall and check that out. Here's a big historical right there. The tree hat grabbers are at it. But here's a historical right here. Looks like it's been nicked a little this year too, which is a good sign. I do not see any sign of somebody hunting out of any of these trees. At least no time in the last year or two. Here's a historical here. Here's a fresh one all tore up right here. Look at that. Earlier in the year, but pretty tore up. A couple of historicals here. This one's been hit a little this last year too. Right where all these trails meet, which is a good area to rub. There's a historical there, historical there. That big tree over there has a historical on it. So let's just take a look at this point here and see if you're coming in here too. That's gonna make a decision on how you hunt this. Well, that tree down here is torn into an hourglass. Yeah, that's been hit this year and past years. Looks like it gets hit every year. And there is a heavy trail coming into here. So being able to hit this too would be important. But there's even a trail over there. You know, and that's matted down like crazy. Some of that's gonna come through here, which I can see now there's a heavy trail in there. Many heavy trails meet right here, which I could hit from over there and those trails. What I wouldn't be able to hit from over there is this. And then coming out of there, and that's a pretty heavy trail. And it's got big historical rubs on it. What I really want to do now is I want to look at those beds over there. But I want to pick a tree over here first. Yeah, it's even got some historical marks on it. Yeah, no sign of hunters. That's a good sign. Nobody been in here. There's even a bed right here. Look at that. Probably an early season bed when this is a jungle. Get right up in here in the shade. You can see the bean where the back is, facing that way. Obstacle to his back. That's a typical buck bed. Looking downwind for a north wind. Right, so here's my tree. Like I got right up there, and you can shoot right down into there. Get all the deer coming out that way, and you can shoot right down into here and get all the deer coming out this way. So there's two natural openings here. So then it's just a matter of how they're bedding that, and that really looks like bedding cover. It's really thick. So we'll go check that out and look at the exact beds. I mean, if there's more heavy big buck beds over there, I might want to hunt over there and just figure the deer are going to come in here and go that way maybe. Looks like a lot of the sign does go that way, but there's some going this way. But most of it definitely does go that way. So a guy could set up over there and cover everything if that's the case. But there's a trail going off there. A couple small trails here. And in actuality, geez. You know what? I don't really see that many trails going into there. They're all kind of going this way, aren't they? Yeah, here's a pretty heavy one right here. But that one I could hit from over here, and this I could hit everything on this side. This might be my tree. Right here. This wouldn't be bad either. That one's actually got some natural openings in it. Could shoot all of this, you have to have wind blowing this way. This could work. Then we would cover every deer if they're coming this direction out of here. I'm going into there. I'm gonna take a little look back here, just make sure there ain't the heavy trails going that way. I know there's one. But if almost all of them come out over here, up this trail and up that trail, this is the spot. That'll put me in this tree because I got a natural opening there. So there's that Tamarack Island, and this is the stuff I'm assuming is bedding. And I got over here and right away I find a fresh bed. Deer ran out of hair all over in it. I'm fairly sure that this little high point here is holding bedding. dumps into dogwood and stuff over there, which is going to be water. This is for sure going to be the bedding area. That's going to be a bed too when the water ain't this deep. That's going to be a bed over there, over here. This whole area is going to be bedded. I don't see the rubs, but there really ain't any rub trees. They could be holding a little further back. It doesn't look as good as I thought it would, but it's being used. There's a good looking tree there. See what's on the side of it. Yeah, here's a bed under it right there. Decent one. Yeah, a real good one on the other side. And there's a trail going right out of it into that area. There's a decent bed here. Oh yeah, a lot more beds up in here. And there's a good rub right there. And this is the trail that comes up to the top side. There's the tree I was going to pick. So this top side is going to be better, I think. Yeah. That rub's actually got a little height to it. Like a 3-year-old, which would be a 4-year-old this year. And there's beds in the background here too. And some heavier trees in here, which is going to create some high spots. There's definitely going to be better bedding over in here, in this area. So that's going to make that tree better. So that kind of locks it in. You can see though, I mean, you don't want to get too high in that tree. They're gonna spot you. It's a nice low stand right there. Quiet. That is probably 45 yards, I would say, if I had to guess, to that tree, to these beds. Here's another heavy trail coming out of here. Coming out, oh, look at all these beds. Coming right out of here, right to that tree again. So yeah, I'm liking that tree a lot more. This trail comes out of those beds, joins with this trail, goes right to there. Yeah, this is just a little island of bedding here. Look at this. Probably early season when this is grass, it's probably used a lot. An old rub, historical rub. So there's got to be, you know, each one of these trees, like that willow tree's got to have beds underneath it, for sure. Yeah, there's a heavy trail going right to it. I guess what the hell, let's just go look. Kind of want to get down in there and look at some of that stuff, but we'll look at this first. So this is the last stuff we could really hunt up in here, because then it gets back into the jungle. See what we got over here. It's pretty wet in here. There's some heavy trails underneath it. Holy cow, real heavy trails underneath it. That is a very heavy trail. Yeah, I can see a bed right underneath the overhanging limb. Right there. I can see a couple in the grass behind it. Not as good as I thought, but there's beds here. But this trail is something else. Holy cow. This is just beat. Which actually, if those beds aren't used too much, this might not be a bad spot to hunt, because this is coming out of the backside of that same bedding. Let's take a look at those beds and see if we could invade this area. This trail is pretty freaking awesome. Yeah, there is a bed there. It doesn't look like well used. Not enough to really worry me that much. Yeah, it's got open grass behind it. They don't like that. Yeah, there's a little bed there, a little bed there, a little bed here, so you got footprints in it, but not really well used. These beds are hardly used. I think a guy could get away with, you know, making a spot right here to stand on the ground and shoot that trail. Have to have a wind going like this. Yeah, I like this a lot. Yeah, this could work for back exit. Didn't even have this in mind, but just looking at it, that heavy trail coming out of the bedding, my gosh. I mean, you look at this, all these trails in here are hard to get down. This one, a deer can get his rack up. You know what I mean? And that's why it's open like this, from them busting their antlers through here. Look at the twigs are broken on here, and you know, this is a long ways from where people are accessing. So this isn't a human trail. You don't even see any limbs broken off or cut. So over there, about 100 yards, is that Tamarack Island. Over here is that willow tree that the heavy trail goes past. It comes right down into here. That bedding is about halfway between me and the tamaracks. But when I got into this grass, there's just a ton of beds in this grass, and even some big historical rubs all over the place on all these trails of spider, especially that heavy trail that goes past the willows. And this can all feed that too. This isn't that far from over there. And man, there's a lot of deer bedding in this area, and nobody's getting at it because there's no trees. Now if you look back here, there's a few trees right here, you know, and I'm going to take a look at that and see if there's a way I could sneak in from the back and even hunt right in here if there's trails coming in and out of there. We'll see. There's those tamaracks. That willow tree is back behind this brush. These are those trees that I just went and looked at. I didn't find much sign there. Those beds were over there. When I got to this point, there's like a spring coming out into a little creek here. And at the head of it, there's a whole bunch of trails coming out of that bedding area and coming together right here. And here's a rub right here at this spot. And I can see that this is really early season. See how dried up it is, the mold on it and stuff. But if you look, this higher one is later, like ruddish. See how orange it is? So it was hit a couple of different times during the season. It comes right up onto here where a guy could hunt, you know? You get the deer right when they come up out of here. So this is a good spot to mark.